恭敬大德圣听，为师法会，济一切众生，经转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生活死离苦得乐。速战无伤。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputoche. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lending life, Medicine Master Buddha 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 Namo, quelling disasters, lending life, Medicine Master Buddha. Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, Amitabha. Welcome back. This is lecture number 152, I believe. Yeah, 152. There's been a request to see if we can have the lecture in Chinese. I don't speak Chinese, but let me see if Zoom has a way to turn on subtitles. If anyone knows, subtitles or captions, automatically generated manual caption. Let me see. Yes, I think you can turn on captions, and on your site, not on my site, on your site you can turn on captions, and then you can choose the language that that you want. yeah, I think that's a possibility. I do not know how to do that, but on my side, in my Zoom, it's already been enabled. So if you want to turn on, excuse me, if you want to turn on subtitles for yourself, you can try. I don't think it will be perfect, um, uh, but you can try. Yeah. Okay, Miss, what do you mean when you just message me? Can you explain? Huishan? No? Okay. Sorry, I just got a message, but I'm not sure what it means. What it means.
Oh, I thought you sent me the Chinese version for translation, so I'm doing the translation.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's just
All
that
right.
someone requests for Chinese translation because they don't understand English, but it says that if you can't, it's okay. So I'm not sure how it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, on your side, anyone who's listening through Zoom, you can turn on captions. I'm not sure how to explain because I haven't done it before, but on my side, in terms of my settings, I have it's already allowed, so anyone can try. Yeah, it has Chinese simplified, Chinese traditional, Vietnamese, all different languages that you can choose. All right. Okay. All right. Now, uh, what you see on your screen is a something I took from the Sixth Petrarch Sutra. It says, "Seeing
Sorry,
one's."
Fasil. I
Yes.
found that there's a tab below the Zoom. There's an icon say caption. When they turn on the caption, they will see the translation at the bottom.
Thank you. Can you say that in Chinese?
如果你们看下面的那些暗号呢，它有一个是讲 caption 的，然后你们转去那个华文你需要的，你就会看到那个呃翻译在那个下面那个 Zoom 的，你们可以试一试。
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.
I
So what you
just tried.
see?
I just tried. It didn't seem to work. So we may have to look into it further.
There's an
Okay.
icon at the bottom where you
Yeah,
see your view start
yeah, I
video.
already
Then there's a
I already did it, and I'm still seeing
So
English.
when you see show caption, you have to click it until it turns green. Then the caption language you can choose from there. I can't show it. Maybe I'll put it on the WhatsApp and I'll screenshot and I'll put it on the WhatsApp. You all can check it out later.
Okay.
I think he's correct. It's not working, JinHe. It's
Oh.
only turning your language English, and when she was speaking in Mandarin, it typed Mandarin. So the caption is actually capturing you speaking English but not translating it.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
Okay, it doesn't so you speak Mandarin, it will come out Mandarin. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. All right. Well. Yeah. Sorry about that. Let me see. Yeah, I think it's caption, is not translation. Okay. All right. Where was I? Okay. Coming back to what you see on your screen. This is useful for when we read the following slides. Today's lecture was very easy to prepare for me because there are so many things that you can investigate regarding mantras, and I came across Shufu's explanation on the Shurangama mantra, and it's really good. I've read it many times, but it never, I guess when I was reading it before, it was never with the objective of using it to teach or to explain. And now with that perspective, I realize it's a really, really good explanation. So today, what I have for you is mostly Shufu's commentary on how to recite the Shurangama mantra. I know it's specific to the Shurangama mantra, but the principles should be applied. And Shufu says himself too, the principles can be applied for all Dharma practices and all mantras, obviously. But before we get there, what you see is the sixth patriarch saying, seeing one's essential nature is merit, equanimity is virtue. Not departing from one's essential nature is merit, actively responding without being affected is virtue. Because why? Shifu talks a lot about virtue when, or the precepts. Virtue is a result of holding the precepts. It is why you hold the precepts. So as the reason I'm sharing this is because it helps us in understanding excuse me, what Shifu has to say. All right? Okay. So last week I didn't finish Shifu's commentary on Lotus Sutra about what mantras or dharanis. And Shifu says mantras are in an esoteric language spoken by the Buddha and cannot be explained. And Shifu says, if you want to study this dharani, try to familiarize yourself with it and memorize it. The wonderful functioning of mantras can't really be explained. The wonderful functions of mantras can accomplish just about anything, but we can only give a superficial commentary about them. If you investigate sutras, you will realize that there are endless mantras. There are many, many, many mantras. We know the mantras in the Lotus Sutra. We know the Tapecho or the Great Compassion Mantra. We know the Leng Yancho or the Shurangama Mantra. You know Om Mani Padme Hum, the great 6-syllable mantra, or Guanin's mantra. Then if you come to the temple in the morning ceremony, evening ceremony, there are various short mantras that we recite that serve specific functions. For example, when we have to transform the 7 grains of rice for the pengben and spirits, there are specific mantras that we can use. But if you investigate other sutras, there's so many mantras. There's also the Pure Land Rebirth mantra that we recite every day. But there are many, many sutras that contains many, many mantras. And sometimes it can be difficult to pick which one to recite. All right. So how do you recite? Okay. Shiva says, but when I say recite, I don't mean you can just do it casually. You have to attain the mantra recitation samadhi. So as we go along, there are certain parts that I've underlined because I think it is important as a principle in terms of our practice. Shiva says the recitation of the mantra must flow forth from your mind, and the mantra must flow back into your mind. Okay, unless you have tried to do that, you don't understand what that means. You need experience for that to make sense. But when you get there, Shifu calls that's called the mantra is the mind, and the mind is the mantra. Your mind and the mantra becomes united. There isn't any distinction. It reaches the point where you couldn't forget it if you wanted to. That's called even when not reciting, the recitation continues. When reciting, there really isn't any recitation. Okay, I hope some of you know what that means. All right, is when you recite the mantra long enough, and your your mind is very calm. You're not thinking about any other things. You're very sincere. It's single-minded. And if you have memorized the mantra, you find that the mantra, the recitation of the mantra is effortless. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It becomes effortless. It's kind of running on autopilot, but at the same time, it's not the autopilot that most people, when you recite, your mind is somewhere else. You can be doing something and thinking about something totally different. Not that kind of autopilot. Your mind is very concentrated. Okay, just let me mute the mic. I need to try to clear my throat. Okay. So that's why Shifu says, when reciting, there really isn't any recitation. It's like you're not putting in effort, but at the same time, you are still doing it. Shifu says, you recite until there aren't any idle thoughts remaining. The only function of the mind is the recitation of the Shurangama mantra. And here you can substitute Shurangama mantra for the Great Compassion mantra or any other practice. Actually, it applies even to reciting the Buddha's name. And then Shufu says that's called meshing with the mind. There are no second thoughts. The flow of the mantra's recitation is like water that flows on in uninterrupted waves. What are second thoughts? Well, if you read the Heart Sutra, okay, the Heart Sutra, the second thoughts are described as shadows or imprints of the mind. Abhidharma, which is Buddhist psychology, in Mahayana is called Yogacara, like the Shurangama Sutra is a Yogacara text. In Abhidharma it's called imprints. What it means is when you have a sensory input, whether you hear something, you see something with your eyes, you hear something with your ears, you smell something with your nose, eyes, ears, nose, you taste something with your tongue, you feel a sensation with your body like wind blowing, and you have a thought in your mind. Okay, these are called the six sense objects. When you have a sense contact and the corresponding consciousness arises, so either the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind consciousness arises, what happens next is you start to think about it. Okay, for example, if you sit down to have some food and you see someone you think you recognize, that's when you see that person, that's the first sensory input. But then after that, your mind takes over. It becomes a shadow. It becomes an imprint. You will start thinking, oh, do I know that person? He looks familiar. Where do I know him from? All those only happen in the mind. And that's why they say mind only or consciousness only. The consciousness only school, that's what they talk about. So everything that we do basically is shadows or imprints. But when you recite the mantra well, you don't have this second thing happening. You don't have a shadow of any sensory input. Okay? Arhats are like that. So that's why they say arhats can see things as they truly are, because they don't create an image or a story behind what they see or what they hear or what they smell. They just encounter it and that's just that. They don't need to have memory or logic or old karmic seeds popping up to distort their perception of reality. All right, but we do. That's why it's called second thoughts. But we don't just have second thoughts. We have third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, depending on how attached we are to that thought. And that's how we create suffering. That's why I say suffering is false. Is created by ourselves. All right. So no second thoughts. Then Shofu says, at that point, everything expresses the Mahayana. The sounds of the breezes blowing and the water flowing are all the Shurangama mantra's heart mantra. If you can reach that level, then if you have broken precepts, you will be able to return to pure precepts. Why are you able to return to pure precepts? Well, because your mind is pure. Not just your mind is pure, but all actions that follow, all speech that follow is also pure. And that's what precepts are actually for. Precepts are to help you regulate your body, speech, and mind so that you can minimize or eliminate creating unwholesome karma, so you can return to purity. So that's what it is. And that's why in the Sixth Petrarch Sutra, excuse me, the Sixth Petrarch says, what is virtue? Virtue is the mind not moving. In other words, virtue is equanimity, one of the four Brahma Viharas. So when you have held the precepts well in the way that the Buddha intended, eventually you come to a point where you are not moved by anything in the world. That means anything the six senses can throw at you. Someone puts money in front of you, you have no second thoughts, you have no shadows. Someone, you see an attractive person in front of you, no shadows. Your mind does not move. Or even if you have shadows, they are just old karmic seeds coming up. You're not confused by that anymore. So equanimity, you are not moved. Yeah, I'm just saying that many times. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, let's move on. You will be endowed with the precepts without going through the formal transmission. If you are someone who doesn't want to progress in your practice, who doesn't want to investigate the Dharma, but you recite the Shurangama mantra for a period of time, quite naturally, you will be inspired to be vigorous. Those who lack wisdom can open their wisdom. If you are not pure so that you break your vegetarian practices and violate the precepts, but you have not forgotten the Shurangama mantra, you will be able to quickly return to purity. Okay. If you violated precepts before you begin upholding the mantra and prior to receiving the precepts, then once you start reciting the mantra, you can completely wipe out all those former offenses, no matter how serious they were, including even the 4 parajikas, the 5 rebellious acts, the 4 or 8 offenses warranting dismissal from the Sangha, which are basically unpardonable. Not even a hair's breadth of an offense will remain. And so I say that the power of the Shurangama mantra is beyond all conception or description. Okay, I feel, I'm not sure if 100% correct, but I feel comfortable enough that if what Chufu just explained, if you can do it to the same level as you can recite the Shurangama mantra, then the same benefits apply as well. Say if it's a great compassion mantra. Why? Because your mind becomes pure. And when your mind becomes pure, like Guanyin Bodhisattva in the Heart Sutra, says when Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva eliminated the 5 skandhas, he crossed beyond all suffering, and he eliminated the 5 skandhas. I'm not sure if I have it 100% correct, but he eliminated the 5 skandhas and he crossed beyond all suffering and difficulty. That's the state of emptiness. And why then, for even the most serious offenses like the 4 parajikas, I think the 4 parajikas are harming the Buddha or shedding the Buddha's blood, killing of your parents, and maybe breaking up the Sangha. Even those offenses that would normally, in the sutras, they would say, oh, you would cause one to fall directly into hell. Why the Shufu here says that you can wipe up those offenses? Well, because karma itself is conditional. Karma is not it's not a fixed thing. It is fixed when you are not, when you haven't, when you're still a normal person. Okay, but when you have entered the ground of emptiness, when you can abide in emptiness, when you're totally pure, you will find that number one, there's no more. You don't mistake the 5 skandhas, your body, your mind, for the self anymore. So one way to understand that is, then who if there's no self, then there won't be a self to undergo the retribution. That's one way of understanding. Second, karma is empty. Karma is based on conditions, and when you can adjust the conditions, then the karma does not arise. So even if there's a cause that you have planted before, without the right conditions, the seed cannot arise. Okay? All right. Do we have any questions so far? Okay. All right. So Isabella has shared some instructions on how to use Zoom for translation. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. There are third-party Yes, Isabella.
Yeah, I think you need to have the right Zoom package on both sides. I believe, it's what you bought, but I think it should also be for free. I can't see from here whether you can do translation on, because you may not have switched on something. So on our side, we cannot turn on the translation. But it looks like Zoom do have a facility for translating to Chinese. That's what I thought as well, because they built it in during the COVID. Yeah.
Okay. All right,
So
maybe,
yeah.
okay, I will explore that and see if there's something I need to turn on.
Yeah. Thank you, Dom. DM for
All right.
sure. Yeah, it's a mystery, but it's good to find out. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Okay, let me turn. Okay, I will explore that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but
All
the
right.
other option
Hmm?
is I think I haven't tried it yet, but the other option is for the person who wants translation is to simply turn on Google Translate. Yeah. And so that it can listen to the translation. There's another method to this, but I don't know
Okay.
whether it will. Yeah.
I
Okay.
think China does not have, it's difficult to get
Google
Google
Translate.
Translate.
So it has to be from the Zoom, then you got not much choice. Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, Shofu goes on to say, some people who learn how efficacious the Shurangama mantra is decide to exclusively recite it and ignore all other aspects of cultivation or practice. Okay, so Shofu says, no, that's going overboard. Because then you don't really understand the Noble Eightfold Path, and you're being very narrow-minded, or rather, it just shows not just a lack of understanding, but a huge attachment to a single practice. Shiva says, in cultivation, no matter what dharma it is, you have to keep to the middle way. Don't do too much and don't fail to do enough. Although the mantra is definitely efficacious, still you have to develop samadhi. So this is a clue for people who are thinking or who are reciting the Shurangama mantra, because I have there are instances where people think that the mantra is efficacious because that's what exactly Shufu says. The mantra itself is efficacious, but there are many parts to bringing the efficaciousness to rise. It's not just the mantra itself; it's also the practitioner. Okay, and we'll discover what are those conditions. The first of which is you have to develop samadhi. Samadhi means proper concentration, proper or right concentration. The Shurangama Sutra describes how efficacious this mantra is, but it also explains the method of returning the hearing to listen to your own nature by cultivating perfect penetration of the ear organ. That's Guanin's, when in what chapter was it? Chapter 8 or chapter 25? I think it's chapter 8 of the Shurangama Sutra. The Buddha asked 25 different sages, people who have ended birth and death, at the very least. The Buddha asked them to share their all the techniques. The Buddha asked them to share their personal, let me say it properly. The Buddha asked 25 different sages to share how they overcame birth and death. So every one of them stood up and they shared their own practice. And for Guanyin, it was returning the hearing to listen to your own self nature through the ear organ. All right. Now, Shuva says that's extremely important. While you are reciting the mantra, you should be returning your hearing to listen to your own nature. In other words, you must reflect within. Didn't I explain earlier how the mantra becomes the mind and the mind becomes the mantra? The mind and the mantra cannot be separated, they are non-dual. When you get there, then you can attain whatever you seek. Everything will go the way you want it to, and you will have success in whatever you undertake. Excuse me. So Shufu says, when the mind and the mantra merge into one, then you have actually attained the samadhi or chant meditation and have acquired real samadhi power. That is something you should know. For every line we learn and understand, we activate one part of its power, but then we must actually put it into practice. Excuse me. However, it's not that you try to make use of the mantra's vast efficacy and tremendous power. If you use this dharma but you don't hold the precepts, like most people who are unclear about anything and casually kill or harm, steal, are lustful, lie, and indulge in intoxicants, and who only recite the 5 great hearts mantra when some crisis happens, then you are defiling the Dharma and there is no merit in that. Okay? If you insist on trying to control the ghosts and order the Dharma protectors around, okay, let me finish. If you insist on trying to control the ghosts and order the Dharma protectors around, then you're just going to be increasing your own karmic offenses. You will bring calamities down upon yourself. Therefore, the first criterion for people who want to cultivate a Dharma is to hold the precepts and place emphasis on developing virtuous conduct. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with the Shurangama mantra, the Shurangama mantra is made up of 5 different parts, and the 5 different parts have specific usages. That's why the Shurangama mantra is so long. It's actually a combination of mantras. And there's also a section of it called the Hat of the Shurangama mantra. We recite that 108 times. I think it goes Tanjutana Anali Bisati Bila Bashala Toli Panta Pantoni Basala Bani Bang Husin Tuluyong Ponsapo. We recite that 108 times at the end, at every evening, at the end of the evening ceremony in the Buddha Hall. And so the Shurangama mantra is very long, and different parts serve different purposes. Shufu says if you know how to use it, depending on the occasion, you know which one to use. And the Shurangama mantra is largely made up of names of the kings of all the various spirits and the ghosts. So that's why here Shufu talks about Dharma protectors, because their names are included in the mantra, and also ghosts as well. For example, the kings of all the various ghosts and spirits are the 4 heavenly kings from the heaven of the 4 kings. And their names are also in the mantra. So what does it mean? You will bring calamities down upon yourself. Okay, think about that, because we will come to a few more slides, and I think it will be explained. If it's not explained, then please remind me. Okay, I just want to make make a sound test. Is my voice okay? I mean, apart from my coughing. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's perfectly
Okay.
fine. Before it was breaking, but it's all good now.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a problem with my internet. All right. Okay, so what kind of person must you be if you want your practice to be successful? If you want to be transferring water into a pot, and you want to make sure that the pot doesn't have holes, so your water doesn't leak out, so you don't waste all your effort. Not only waste all your effort, but bring trouble to yourself. Okay, Shiva says you must not fight, you must not be greedy, you must not seek. Seek means expecting a result. Be selfish, pursue your own advantage, or lie. These are known as our 6 guidelines. The 6 guidelines are a result of holding the precepts. Okay, you hold the 5 precepts well, then your behavior should accord with the 6 guidelines. Shu says if your virtue in the way is insufficient, but you pretend to be a sage who can transmit teachings, or pass yourself off as the leader of a nation, then your behavior is unacceptable. Nowadays, everyone is interested in getting the most magic out of mantras, but they are not attentive to their own moral character. And so, in fact, their recitation will be ineffectual. Okay, so that's another perspective. If you want to evoke the efficaciousness of the mantra, you have to be, you need to have virtue in yourself. All right. Shiva says, therefore, those who study the Shurangama mantra Dharma must be proper in their behavior, proper in their intent, must not have defiled thoughts, and must not do impure deeds. They should be very attentive to cultivating purity. If on the one hand they cultivate the Shurangama mantra, and on the other hand they don't follow the rules, then they will get themselves into deep trouble. Everyone should pay close attention to this point. All right. Now Shufu explains more. Shiva says, if your intent is not proper and your conduct is not proper, then the Vajra Treasury Bodhisattvas will lose their respect for you and won't protect you. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are compassionate and will not hurt any living being or harm beings out of anger. That's just the nature of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. They are incapable of harming any living being. It is not, they just are unable to do that. That's why they are Bodhisattvas. It is like for some people, if I'm using this example because it was in the news maybe a year or two ago. There was this lady, I think it was in Brazil or something, and she filmed herself and she shared it on the internet of her breaking the legs of puppies. And I just cannot imagine how a person can do something like that on purpose. You break and cause harm or pain, and breaking, I mean, you're not just hitting, you're breaking the leg of a puppy, you know. To me, it's just inconceivable, and I'm sure all of you listening are like that. And so the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are also like that. Most of us would rather harm ourselves than to harm a puppy in that way, right? Yeah, so that they are like that. But Shufu says, but their attendants, okay? So you don't have to be afraid of the Buddhas or the Bodhisattvas, but with their attendants is a totally different story. So who are these attendants? They're the Dharma protectors, the gods, the dragons, the ghosts, the spirits. They don't have the level of practice as the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. You know, they pledge, they promise the Buddha to help all Dharma protectors, but they are kind of like, I won't say they are the level of human beings, but they still, most of them are not enlightened beings. So Shufu says they get angry, you know, and those evil ghosts and evil spirits, upon seeing you cultivating the mantra while committing offenses, will bring disaster and harm down upon you, and will make you feel very uncomfortable. Okay, so one way to understand this is not out of fear. Okay, if you don't do anything wrong, they will never harm you. And I'm pretty sure they won't, how you say, okay, there's a story. I just remember this story. I think it was during when they were praying for rain in San Francisco, and I don't remember who this was. I read one of the monks who was the Weino, was the cantor for the ceremony, was very upset, was very angry when he was performing the ceremony, and it had to do with something, I'm not sure. And apparently, after the ceremony was over, he experienced terrible stomach cramps. And then Shufu later scolded him and said, why were you so angry when you were performing the ceremony? Because the ceremony is to invoke the compassion of the Dragon Kings to make rain. Why? Because Dragon Kings are responsible for controlling rain, according to the sutras and to Shufu. And I think I read in another, I don't remember the source, I think it was Shufu's commentary. Someone requested the Dragon King for rain, and then the Dragon King said, maybe it was Shufu himself, and then the Dragon King said, oh, I can't directly make it rain. I have to go to Lord Chakra, who is the the king of the heaven of the 33, Indra, also known as Indra. Tikong, in Chinese we call him Tikong, the Jade Emperor. The Dragon King said, oh, and there are different kind of Dragon Kings, different kind of dragons. Some live in the sea, some live in the clouds, some live on land, I think. So anyway, the Dragon King said, oh, I have to get permission from the Jade Emperor first before I can make it rain, because that's like the boss. And I think it was Shufu who said, yeah, just tell him that, you know, I'm requesting to make it rain, and then later it rained. So anyway, coming back to this monk, Shufu said that because of your disrespect for the Dragon King, you made the Dragon King really upset. and that's why you have a stomach pain, and he was supposed to die or something. I'm not sure how that reflects on the Dragon King. I don't know how to make a connection or explain that, but anyway, then Shifu said he had to talk to the Dragon King on the monk's behalf, something like that. Yeah, so we have to be very careful, because when we use certain things and we are not at the level, especially if we do it on purpose, if our intent is not right, we should know better. Basically, we should know, when they know that we know better, let's put it this way. Yeah, they won't, I'm confident they don't undiscriminately just harm people when you should know better and you don't do as you should. Yeah, then you better watch out. Okay, Shufu goes on to say, because they're Dharma protectors, they actually have a lot of virtue, will cause you to get into grave trouble or make you have to undergo a series of misfortunes or a series of retributions. This is really no joking matter. Therefore, you must eat vegetarian food and purify yourself. Most of all, your mind must be pure. Don't have defiled false thoughts. Maintain physical purity and don't practice defiling dharmas. At all times, guard your purity. Don't commit even the slightest infractions of the rules. Okay, now, how do we understand this? Okay, imagine who protects people? The police, right? If you are a criminal yourself and you break the law, like if you sell drugs, or say someone breaks into your home, but you're a drug dealer and you have drugs in the house, are you going to call the police? You won't be so dumb, right? If you call the police, they come to your house and they find that, oh, someone broke into your house, but you're actually a drug dealer. Guess what? You are the one who's going to get arrested, right? So it's something like that, all right? I won't say exactly like that, but it's something like that, all right? Okay. Shifu says reciting the Shurangama mantra is more valuable than any amount of gold. Reciting the mantra once is equivalent, excuse me, to tons of gold. All right. But then, right after saying this, Shifu also says, but your recitation shouldn't be motivated by greed. If you hold the precepts, then you won't be jealous or obstructive. Remember Sixth Petra saying virtue is the mind unmoving? Shiva says you won't be greedy or angry when your recitation of the mantra will generate pervasive responses and massive benefits. So that's how you protect yourself. Because if you don't, the Shurangama Sutra explains, if you are still moved, but when you get efficacious results from your practice or from the Shurangama mantra, either one, you can be taken over by a demon, because internally you still have the demons of greed, anger, and ignorance. So you have to be very careful about that. And Shiva says, but if your behavior doesn't accord with the rules, the Dharma protecting good spirits will stay far away from you, and when something happens to you, they won't pay any attention. Therefore, those who recite the Shurangama mantra shouldn't be cunning or behave in ways that continually create offenses. So it's interesting how Shufu defines the precepts here. If you look at the second line, Shufu says if you hold the precepts, then you won't be jealous or obstructive. You won't be greedy or angry, and you won't be greedy or angry. Okay, so a lot of people hold the precepts thinking they're pure, and they hold the precepts strictly, but they don't pay attention to how you're supposed to be as a result of holding the precepts. What's the spirit of the precepts? So when they say don't harm, they don't harm. Don't lie, but they don't really fully appreciate the holistic approach to precepts. So Shifu says one of the outcomes is you get less jealous slowly, less obstructive, meaning you don't deny people what they should get. You won't be greedy, and then you also won't get angry as well. Okay, let me see, what's the time? It's 10:20. Now is a good time. I'm pretty sure no one's going to reply, but I'm going to try again. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yeah, we have one. Yes, Mr. Tai.
Faster. Okay, what about when we recite the Surangama Sutra? So, what about the pronunciation? Sometimes, let's say, we may pronounce not in the actual words that is written in the sutra. So is any difference in it?
Okay, so both when it comes to the sutra and the mantra, there is effectively there's no difference. Okay, if you recite the sutra, at the end of every sutra, there's a mantra called patching flaws, and you can recite that mantra in case you make any mistakes in your recitation and you're worried that it wasn't perfect because you have, say, you're reciting to help someone and it's very important to you that you get it perfect, but it's very, very hard sometimes to recite it 100% correct. Then you can recite the mantra to patch up any flaws. All right, so that's for mainly for sutras. Then when it comes to mantras, especially since some mantras or some sections of mantras are made up of names, when you understand the history of mantras, then you realize why it's not a problem. Okay, why isn't it not a problem? Well, some people say that the original sound of the mantras comes from the Sanskrit language, the 42 syllables that are used. For example, the Avatamsaka syllabary, which, by the way, is a mantra. All right, the Avatamsaka syllabary is actually a mantra. So, many of the mantras that we recite have been transliterated. It has been changed into Chinese. Okay, and Chinese pronunciation is very different from Sanskrit pronunciation. Like even the names of like Shariputra, Ananda, when you pronounce them in Chinese, it's very different. Sounds very different. Like Shakyamuni Buddha is Sakyamuni for. If someone doesn't know, they will think there is someone totally different, two different Buddhas. So when the mantra has been changed into the Chinese language, already it sounds different. All right, and not only that, when you hear Shufu recite the mantra, for example, Shufu comes from a different part of China, and his pronunciation of certain words is different compared to, say, someone from the south, like in Guangdong, for example. And so there are bound to be variances in the way people pronounce the mantra. Not only that, like I said, it's already different from the so-called original Sanskrit in the 42 syllables of the Sanskrit alphabet. That's one way of understanding it, so that we don't have to worry about if we mispronounce. Okay, so don't worry about mispronouncing. It's the heart that matters, it's the intent. Anyway, true mantra recitation, is done silently. You don't have to enunciate it, but also silently you have an internal sound. So that's one. Second one is even if you mispronounce a name wrongly, okay, the Dharma protecting spirits, they all know who you mean. So like my name is JinHe. In Chinese, it's JinHe, but in the US, everyone will say JinHe, JinHe. Oh, Venerable JinHe, the Venerable JinHe. And I will say, oh, it's He, but it's pronounced as her, Her, or Ben-Her. Oh. But even if they call me JinHe, I know who they are calling. You know, I know, I'm not confused. So it's the same thing. All right, especially since these are Dharma protecting spirits. If you mispronounce their name, it doesn't confuse them. We may get confused, but not them. All right, does that answer your question, Mr.
Yes,
Tai?
thank you, Faster. Yes, thank you, Faster.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. Very good question. Anyone else have any questions? It doesn't have to be related to our topic as long as it's related to the Dharma. Anyone?
Could I ask a question?
Yes, Peggy, of course.
So usually I have trouble falling asleep. So I actually recite, Amitabha or something to help me to sleep. But lately I heard that we're not supposed to do recitation lying down. So I can understand that. But my question is, sometime when we're not feeling well, we are lying down, we're feeling sick. And to me personally, recitation really helped me to get through my difficulty, even when I'm lying down to write, when I'm not feeling well. So I'm a little bit confused. Could you explain on that, please?
Okay, why is discouraged from people? Why people are discouraged from reading sutras or reciting while lying down is because it might be disrespectful. When I say might be disrespectful, only the person doing it will know their intent, their heart, their intention. So if the person do it with and know they are being lazy, and then they know they're just, they just want to relax, then you can't just, it's not a blanket thing that you can apply on everyone. Okay, so this, for a situation like that, the practitioner has to decide for themselves what is their intent. All right, you don't want to develop a habit of becoming lazy, because then life after life, whenever you encounter the Dharma, those seeds will pop up, and naturally you just feel very lazy when it comes to the Dharma. You just feel like lying down and all that. That's not what you want for yourself. So that's why we have caution against things like that. But if the practitioner is tired, or you do it because you have your own reasons and you're not being disrespectful, then it's fine. Because we tend to create a lot of rules. For example, some people say, oh, you can't recite Amitabha's name when you go to the toilet. But only if you think it's disrespectful. For someone who's single-minded in their recitation, when you eat, when you sleep, when you lie down, when you sit, when you're standing, walking, toilet or no toilet, when you shower, you're always reciting the Buddha's name. You don't have thoughts of being disrespectful, or so it all depends on the practitioner. And as for reciting to sleep, well, if someone only recites it as a method to sleep, and throughout the day they don't care at all, then I would say maybe that's not a really good use of reciting the name, for example, but but it's hard to, how do I put it? If the person is aware, then ideally you want to recite the Buddha's name more often. Okay, don't use it as a sleeping aid. Yeah, if you only use it as a sleeping aid, then I guess it's not a good way for yourself, for the practitioner, I mean. Yeah. But if there's someone who constantly recites the Buddha's name and finds that it helps them sleep, the Buddhas won't mind. Yeah. Because if you can sleep well, then you can approach your practice better. Yeah. But if you can find, but if someone is worried and they really feel, oh, I shouldn't be doing that, then what you can do is you can find out why it helps you. Why does it help you sleep? And if you can figure it out, then you can use something else rather than reciting the Buddha's name. But you apply the same mind. What do I mean? Okay. If someone, say, recite Amitabha Buddha's name, and they can get into very deep states of concentration when they meditate, if you can figure out how your mind works, then when you switch from reciting the Buddha's name to, say, reciting Om Mani Padme Hum or reciting the Great Compassion Mantra, you will use the same skill. And then after a while, you realize that, oh, it's not so much what I'm using, it's how I'm using it. Why? Because you kind of unlock the key or the secret behind the concentration. So instead of the Dharma doors turning you, or the different methods or practices influencing the practitioner can start turning the different practices. You are in control. So for now, if someone, if reciting the Buddha's name helps you sleep, figure it out. Don't just do it and without learning anything. Yeah, learn how it helps and then substitute it for something that might make you feel more comfortable. Or as the Christians would say, don't take the Lord's name in vain, Does that help? Did I answer your question, Peggy?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyway, there are different ways to help people sleep. In Berkeley, we used to teach a method for meditation that is very good for sleeping, because I'm not sure whether I was boring or whether the method works, but halfway through, people would usually fall asleep. So I adapted it for as a sleep technique instead. All right. Any other questions? No? Okay. I kind of got carried, let me see, carried with the time. What I wanted to also share, also last week, is this story. It's a very interesting story. It's called the As You Wish Woman. I'm not sure why it's called As You Wish Woman. She's also known as the Black Hat Woman, which sounds a lot more sinister, the Black Hat Woman. And it's about Shifu when he was still in China, and how he used the mantras, I think it was a Shurangama mantra, to deal with a case of possession of a spirit. And the spirit was known as the Black Hat Woman, or As You Wish Woman. Yeah, but time up. So, excuse me, you will all have to tune in again next week as we continue with Shufu's commentary on the Shurangama mantra. And I'll make sure that we also check out this As You Wish Woman story. All right. I'm going to ask one last time. Any final questions? No? Okay. So hard to get questions out of you all. Okay. All right. Let me end this slideshow. And so for once, we can end on time. Okay. Dedication of merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. Hold on, let me select something. Okay, let me ask, did my sound just change? Did you all just hear more sound, more background sound, or same? Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, 3 bows to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, Amitabha everyone. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you all next week.